The fire in the study had burned low, and Alira Voss knelt before it, feeding it slivers of dry wood with careful, practiced hands. She did not look up when the door opened. She never did. Servants who looked directly at the Alpha King were servants who made mistakes, and Alira had not survived 3 years in the Blackthorn stronghold by making mistakes. "Leave the wine on the desk," said Cade Ashbourne, his voice low and tired in a way she rarely heard it. He was Alpha King of the largest wolf pack in the Northern Territories, feared by rivals and obeyed without question by his own people. To Alira, he was mostly a pair of boots crossing the floor, a shadow that passed through rooms and left silence behind it. She set the tray down without a sound and rose to leave. "Wait," Alira froze. In 3 years, he had never once told her to wait. "Your hands," Cade said, studying her from his chair by the window. "They were shaking a moment ago. Now they are steady." "Why?" She kept her eyes lowered. "Forgive me, my lord. I did not notice." It was a lie, and she suspected he knew it, but he only waved her away, and she left before he could ask anything else. Outside the study door, she pressed her back to the stone wall and closed her eyes. Her hands had been shaking because she had felt something that night, a pull, faint but unmistakable, the moment she stepped into the same room as him. She had felt it before, in smaller moments, and each time she had told herself it meant nothing. Servants did not get to have feelings about kings, especially not servants like her. Alira had come to Blackthorn with nothing but a false name and a scar across her collarbone that she kept hidden beneath her collar. The scar was the mark of a broken pack, a wolf whose bond to the moon goddess had been severed by tragedy. Most who saw it, on the rare occasions it slipped into view, assumed she had lost a mate or failed some sacred trial. None of them guessed the truth, that the scar came from the night her entire pack was destroyed in a war Cade Ashbourne's forces had won. She had been 16. She remembered fire more than faces, and running more than fighting, and a voice, her mother's, telling her to hide and not come out no matter what she heard. She had listened. She had lived. Everyone else had not. For years afterward, she drifted between human towns, afraid of her own reflection, afraid that the wolf inside her, quiet and wounded, would never wake again. When hunger and desperation finally led her to Blackthorn's gates seeking work, she told herself it was only for survival. She had not expected to stay. She certainly had not expected to feel anything but fear inside the walls that had once meant her family's end. But 3 years had passed, and somehow those walls had become the closest thing to home she had. That night, the danger came without warning. Alira was crossing the east corridor with a basket of linens when she heard it, the wrongness in the air, a stillness that did not belong. Her wolf, dormant for so long, rose inside her with a jolt of instinct sharper than thought. She dropped the basket and ran, not away from danger but toward it, toward the study where she knew Cade would still be working late into the night. She reached the door in time to see a shadow move behind the heavy curtain, a blade catching moonlight as it arced toward the king's back. She did not remember deciding to move. One moment she was in the doorway, and the next, she had crossed the room faster than any untrained servant should be able to, faster than any ordinary wolf, and shoved Cade sideways out of the blade's path. The knife caught her instead, a shallow cut along her arm, and pain lit through her, sharp and real. Cade's guards swarmed in seconds later, subduing the assassin, but Cade himself only stared at Alira, at the blood on her sleeve, at the impossible speed she had shown. "Who are you?" he asked, and for the first time, his voice held not command, but genuine confusion. "No one, my lord," she whispered, clutching her arm. "Only a servant who was in the right place." He did not believe her. She could see it in his eyes. But he let her go to have her wound treated, and she thought, foolishly, that the matter might end there. It did not. 2 days later, the pack's oldest seer, a frail woman named Morella, who rarely left her chambers, collapsed during the full moon gathering in the great hall. The room fell into stunned silence as she was carried to a chair, her eyes rolled back, her body trembling with a vision too strong for her aging mind to hold alone. When she woke, she did not look at Cade, seated on his throne at the head of the hall. She looked past him, into the crowd of servants standing along the walls, until her gaze found Alira. "There," Morella said, her voice cracking with the weight of what she had seen. The moon goddess has shown me. The bond was never broken. It was hidden, cursed. That girl carries the mark of the king's true mate. The hall erupted into noise, shock, disbelief, outrage from the nobles who had spent years positioning their own daughters for the honor Morella now handed to a nameless servant. Illyra felt the floor tilt beneath her. She wanted to run, the way she had run as a girl of 16, but there was nowhere to run to anymore. The past she had buried was climbing out of its grave in front of the entire pack. Cade rose from his throne, his expression unreadable, and crossed the hall until he stood before her. "Is this true?" he asked, quiet enough that only she could hear. "Do you carry a bond to me?" Illyra's throat felt too tight for words. "I don't know how to answer that, and still keep myself safe," she admitted. "Then answer it honestly, and I will decide what safety means." So she told him. Not everything, not yet, but enough. She told him about the scar, about the pull she had felt in his presence for months, about the way her wolf had gone silent for years, and had only stirred back to life the night she stepped into that corridor and saw the blade coming for him. What she did not tell him, not that night, was where she came from. That truth came out 3 days later, dragged into the light by someone else entirely. Lord Draven, an elder of the Pack Council, and a man who had fought beside Cade's father in the old wars, requested a private audience with the king. Illyra was summoned to attend, as was now expected of her given her uncertain new status, and she stood near the wall, while Draven laid a folded piece of parchment on the table, an old registry page, yellowed with age, listing the names of a fallen pack destroyed 16 years earlier. "Her real name is there," Draven said, tapping a line near the bottom. "Illyra, daughter of the Voss line, the pack we crushed in the border war, my king, the one your father ordered destroyed for harboring deserters." Cade's eyes moved from the parchment to Illyra's face, searching it as if seeing her for the first time. "Is this true?" Illyra did not lower her gaze this time. She had hidden long enough. "Yes," she said. "I am the last of the Voss line. I watched my pack burn when I was 16 years old. I did not come here for revenge, my lord. I came here because I had nowhere else left to go, and this place, despite everything, was the only one that would take me in." The room was silent for a long moment. Draven looked triumphant, certain this revelation would end whatever strange favor the servant girl had gained. But Cade's expression was not one of anger. It was something closer to grief. "My father's wars were not always just ones," he said quietly. "I have lived with the weight of decisions I did not make, but still inherited. If the goddess has truly bound our fates together, then perhaps this is her way of asking me to make right what was broken." Draven argued fiercely against it, insisting that a bond could be faked, that Morella was old and her visions unreliable, that the pack would never accept a queen from a line their own king's father had destroyed. He proposed a solution meant to end the matter entirely, a challenge ritual, ancient and rarely used, in which a claimed mate would stand before the pack's sacred moonstone and either prove her bond through the awakening of her wolf, or be exposed as a fraud unworthy of the crown. It was a cruel test. Illyra's wolf had been silent and wounded for 16 years. There was no guarantee it would answer, curse or no curse, bond or no bond. If it failed to rise before the entire pack, she would not simply lose a claim to the throne. She would likely lose her life, cast out as a deceiver who had endangered the king. Cade refused the challenge at first, but Illyra, standing straighter than she had in years, accepted it herself. "If this bond is real," she said, "then let the goddess prove it in front of everyone who doubts me. I am done hiding." The night of the challenge, the entire pack gathered beneath the full moon around the ancient moonstone, a slab of pale rock said to hold power older than any bloodline. Illyra stood before it in a plain gray dress, her scar visible for the first time, pale and jagged across her collarbone. Whispers rippled through the crowd at the sight of it. Morella stood beside the stone, her voice trembling as she spoke the old words, calling on the moon goddess to reveal the truth of the bond between Illyra Voss and Cade Ashbourne. Draven watched with cold satisfaction, certain the girl would fail. For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened. Illyra felt only the weight of hundreds of eyes, the doubt pressing in from every side, the same fear that had kept her silent for 16 years, now threatening to swallow her whole. Then Cade stepped forward, past the boundary meant only for the one being tested, and took her hand in front of the entire pack. "I do not need a stone to tell me what I already feel," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I felt it the night she saved my life. I feel it now. Whatever the goddess intends, I choose her freely, curse or no curse, war or no war between our fathers." Something in Alira broke open at his words, some last wall she had built around her heart to survive. Warmth surged through her chest, spreading down through her arms, her scarred collarbone burning not with pain but with light. Her wolf, silent for 16 years, rose within her at last, and the moonstone beneath her feet began to glow a soft, unmistakable silver. The crowd gasped as the ancient light wrapped around both Alira and Cade, confirming what Morella had seen in her vision days before. The bond was real. It had always been real, buried under grief and fear, and a curse born from tragedy, waiting only for the truth and a moment of courage to set it free. Draven's schemes unraveled in the aftermath. Further inquiry, pressed by Cade himself, revealed that the Elder had played a hidden role in escalating the border war years earlier for his own political gain, information he had kept buried for over a decade. He was stripped of his council seat and exiled from Blackthorn territory before the next full moon. In the weeks that followed, Alira was no longer the silent servant who kept her eyes lowered and her past hidden. She stood beside Cade as his acknowledged mate, learning the customs and responsibilities of a queen, supported by a pack that had watched her prove her bond beneath the moon itself. It was not an easy transition. Some nobles remained cold, some wounds from the old war took time to heal, and Alira herself had to learn to trust a happiness she had never believed she deserved. But every evening, when the fire in what was once his study alone burned low, Cade no longer sat there in silence. Alira sat beside him now, no longer serving from the shadows but sharing the light, and when she looked up to meet his eyes, she no longer had to hide. The moon goddess had kept her promise, even through 16 years of grief and silence. In the end, she had not simply given Alira a king, she had given her a way home,